An eco-house is simply a house that's been designed for energy efficiency. Originally, eco meant ecological house, but at the moment it's more economic house. But economic houses lead to benefits to the ecology as well, just by not using as much energy. How does an eco-house save you money? Simply, the less energy you need to heat your house, the less energy you are paying for. In this current climate of high utility bills, a house like this one can save you considerable money by being efficient with the energy you buy. An eco-house benefits the environment for the same reason it saves you money. Less energy, less cost, less generation of energy. Less energy generated means that the grid doesn't have to supply as much electricity, because electricity is the power used by these eco-houses. It's the only true renewable source of energy. Last year, the UK generated 38% of its power from renewable sources. That will only increase. Fossil fuels such as oil and gas are generally not used in eco-houses for their obvious carbon footprint and their longevity. They will be phased out over time. In 2007, it became law that when you are selling a house, you have to provide an EPC certificate for that house, Energy Performance Certificate. These are rated between A and G, with A being the best and G being the worst. The average at the moment in the UK is a D, and only 1 in 14 new build houses is EPC rating of A. In my opinion, if you have an A or a B, you have a good economic house that will lower your bills. House construction is the key factor of creating an eco-house. Irrelevant of how you heat your house, the key to a good EPC rating is to stop the heat that you've paid for escaping back out into the environment. We want to keep the heat in the house because that's money. So what are the techniques we use in construction to keep that heat inside the building? Well, the obvious one is insulation, and more insulation, and yet more insulation. It's much easier to create an insulated house on a new build house because you're not having to wrap it around an existing structure, which is why EPC ratings of A are very difficult to achieve in an ordinary house that needs it to be retrofitted. Insulation is put in the walls, it's put in the ceiling, it's put in the floors, it's put downstairs under the concrete. It's everywhere to wrap the house in a completely enclosed insulation bubble. We also incorporate triple glazing into all of the windows. That also helps us stopping the heat from leaving the building. The third construction technique is simply to make the house as airtight as possible. This stops air just simply leaking out of holes, through walls, through gaps around windows, through lights in the ceiling. So houses like this have membranes in the walls that are joined and sealed to keep that air in here, and therefore the air and heat can't escape through holes. An eco-house needs to generate heat efficiently. There's no point going to all of the insulation if we're burning huge amounts of oil. We need efficient heat generation so we can put that into the building. To do this, we use new technologies such as an air source heat pump. What is an air source heat pump? Well, it's kind of like an air conditioning system in reverse. An air conditioner takes heat from the building and dumps it outside, therefore cooling the building down. An air source heat pump does it the other way around. It takes heat from outside air and puts it into the building. It does this in the form of heating water. That water then flows through the floor in pipes to heat basically underfloor heating. An air source heat pump is very efficient, and this is because it grabs free energy from the air. For every 1 unit of energy you put into the heat pump, you get 3 free units from the air. To put it in money terms, for every 25p you spend on energy to power the heat pump, you get £1 worth of heat energy back into the house. Your house can also generate its own power. This house has a solar array of panels on the south-facing roof here that goes through these solar boxes here that convert into mains use for the house itself. On a day like today, which is a December day with the sun out, it's generating enough power to power this entire house. If it generates too much power, you can set it up so it sells that back to the grid and it can actually make you money. Now that you've paid to heat the air up inside your house, it's nice and warm. We want to be able to keep that heat in the building as discussed through insulation, but we also mentioned air tightness. If we've got an airtight house, how do we get fresh air into the house? To do this, we utilize a technology called MVHR, which stands for mechanical ventilation with heat recovery. Throughout the house, air is taken from the building. It then goes through a heat exchanger, and that heat is taken out and put into inbound air, and then that air is blown back into the building. This vent here is taking the heat from the kitchen, and that heat is then passed over into inbound air, and it comes out on a vent on the other end of the room. That process is very efficient, about 90%, and the entire air in this house is turned over every hour. That gives a little bit of health benefit because the air is also filtered. It also removes any water from the air. So effectively, it's like having all the windows open without opening any windows. Fresh air all the time. Hopefully this short video has given you the tools to make a more educated assessment of purchasing a house that is more eco-friendly. The two houses that we've been in and discussing throughout this video are in the town centre of Bridgnorth. You don't have to be in a forest to build an eco house. These are meters away from the high street, and yet they're both high rated houses for an eco point of view. Both of these houses are now available for sale.